Hey guys, welcome back to Interim Gardens. Today's video we're going to be talking about one of the crown jewels of the garden, tomatoes. Let's get started. Alright, so I've been a bit hesitant about making a video on growing tomatoes. I don't know what it is about them, but there's so much information, like what to do, what not to do, different fertilizers to use, sprays, amendments, like it's kind of crazy. I don't have it all figured out yet myself, but this is my third year growing them. The first 2 years were pretty successful, got a lot of great tomatoes. So all I can do is tell you exactly what I'm doing this year, exactly what I did last year and the year before, and then I'll tell you the results from each year because they have all varied. And you can at least add that to your informational database on tomatoes and make your own decisions. Just to tell you a couple tried and true, sworn by things I've heard: putting a whole fish underneath a tomato plant, putting raw egg in a tomato plant, putting a book of matches underneath a tomato plant. Now all those things were actually to add specific fertilizers. The matches, I guess, had phosphorus. The fish and the egg will break down and provide nutrients to the plant. So that all makes sense. And there was another cool one about spraying aspirin on your plants. Now this one I've not tried yet, but I think the theory behind it is very cool. Aspirin has something called salicylic acid in it, and that mimics a hormone in tomato plants, of which the tomato plant releases this hormone whenever it's being attacked by a virus or a disease. What it does, it tells itself to beef up its defenses and protect itself. So by spraying the salicylic acid on the tomato, it makes it think that it's under attack by a virus or something. So it goes into like defense mode, it beefs up its defenses, and you kind of trick your plant into becoming stronger and more fortified. Anyway, I think that's pretty cool. I might actually try that this year. But those are the kind of things I'm talking about, like so many different tricks and stuff like that. Look, when it comes down to it, you literally just dig a hole, you stick the plant in the hole, you water it, and you give it some sunlight. And you know what? Plants are smart. They've been growing for millions of years. They can do just fine without all those crazy tips and tricks and whatnot. But adding those things, extra fertilizers, nutrients, that does give you a stronger, more productive plant, maybe even tastier tomatoes. So those things are valid and you should look into them and decide what you want to use. But I just really don't want to overcomplicate it. I know a lot of my friends are just buying tomatoes from the store and planting them in their garden, and they're probably not even thinking about all this other stuff. I don't want to enter more confusion into it because it really is as simple as just plant the seed, plant the plant, and nature will take its course. Okay, so one of the most important components of gardening and growing plants is the soil. And honestly, that's probably the most expensive component of gardening, is getting good quality soil, the best you can find. Now, one key ingredient in good soil is organic matter, and you find that with compost. So really, compost is king. It provides nutrients, it acts as a slow release fertilizer, it helps with the soil structure, holding moisture, helping with drainage. It's just like the best thing that you can add to your garden is good, well-aged compost. If you don't have time to make your own, just find a good local supplier and just use the heck out of that stuff. So what we're doing this year, that book I showed you the other day, Square Foot Gardening by Mel Bartholomew, he gives a recipe for an exact mix that he recommends for his raised bed. It's called Mel's Mix. It's 3 components: peat moss, which helps with moisture retention, vermiculite, which helps with drainage and soil structure, and then compost. And I think he recommends at least 5 different sources, because many different industries, they will sell their byproduct as compost, like cow manure, chicken manure, pine fines from shredded bark and stuff from the logging industry or whatever. You can find compost from a lot of different industries. So he says mix them from as many sources as you can find, because they all are slightly different and provide different nutrients. Anyway, so that's what we have here. And you can take a look at it. It's a beautiful, dark, rich. The white stuff you see is the vermiculite, and it just holds its structure really well. See, I've heard that it's supposed to have kind of almost a chocolate cake consistency. That's a good soil. It smells really nice and earthy. There's a worm in there. So that is what we're going to be planting our tomatoes in. We have 6 different tomatoes that are going to be going in this bed, and then I have 6 or 8 other tomatoes growing in a 5-gallon bucket. So let me show you that. So here's our tomatoes growing in our 5-gallon buckets on the porch. I'm going to be getting into exactly what we used to fill these buckets, because I did use a slightly different mix than I showed you earlier. And I'm also going to, at the end of this video, going to show you what each one of these tomato varieties are, if you're interested in that. So stay with me here. So these are the exact 3 ingredients that we're using for all of our 5-gallon buckets this year. Probably a lot of people are doing container gardening because if you don't have a lot of space, you can still totally grow veggies at home in containers, buckets, whatever you got. And it's probably even more important to have a good soil mix. So it comes down to these 3 ingredients. We got peat moss, which is this light fluffy stuff that holds moisture really well. You got the most important aspect, which is compost. This happens to be mushroom compost. Provides that good nutrients, fertilizer, and helps with soil structure. That's your organic matter. And then I cut it with this organic raised bed potting mix to add some extra volume. So that's exactly what we're using. And we are using a couple amendments, which I'll show you as well. We have garden lime. This helps to add calcium to the soil. Tomatoes do need calcium, otherwise they can develop this thing called blossom end rot, where the blossom end of the tomato rots. Total bummer. That's what happened to me last year. I'll get into that in a bit. So you got to add some calcium. I'm using some Epsom salts for magnesium. I bought this stuff to actually use for our carrots, and I heard it was good for tomatoes, so I'm using some of this as well. Remember, this year it's an ongoing learning experience. That's just kind of part of what gardening is all about. And I'm also using worm castings. As you saw, I got my own worms, so I can start harvesting my own worm castings, but this is literally worm poop, and it's just full of microbes and good nutrients. That's great stuff. So I'm throwing that on all our tomatoes as well. Okay, so the first year I grew tomatoes, I just used the regular Miracle-Gro potting mix in the big yellow bag. It was fine, it's good stuff. And this also non-organic, slow-release fertilizer mixed with the garden lime for calcium. And the plants did pretty good. We got some good tomatoes that year. So last year, for some reason, I decided to cut corners. I paid for it dearly. I got the cheapest potting mix I could find. The brand was Stay Green. It was in a blue bag. That stuff was terrible, but I didn't know enough about the importance of soil, structure, compost, so I didn't know. I thought it was good enough. It was cheap, so that was nice. So I just used that soil, and then this great fertilizer called Trifecta Plus from Luke at the MI Gardener. He's a YouTube garden account. You should check him out. I just used that crappy soil, and this stuff, it was not enough. My tomatoes didn't turn out good. We got some good cherry tomatoes, but the larger slicer tomatoes, they developed blossom end rot. It was a bummer. And I didn't use any of this garden lime, which I think maybe that was part of it too. But it all comes down to the soil. Do not cut corners. Don't buy the cheap stuff. If you want to buy a cheaper potting mix, I recommend this stuff, Kellogg's. It's organic. I think it's a Home Depot brand, but this stuff is pretty good. I recommended it to a friend recently, and he's happy with it. Shout out to Renee. See, look at all this extra stuff. This is what I'm talking about. There's so many different things you can add and do. It gets crazy, but look, just keep in mind the simplicity of it is dig the hole, plant the plant, and you will reap the rewards. All right, so we're gonna get into planting the rest of our tomatoes in that bed over there, and I wanna show you some of my different varieties. I got some really cool tomatoes growing this year, and I'm excited to share them with you. All right, let's get into it. All right, guys, we got some garden helpers with us here, but we're gonna get this one into the ground. Look, this is the first one. It's called Berkeley Tie. This is an awesome tomato. Let's see what this root ball looks like. These guys are definitely ready to be planted. Look at that. So nice strong roots. And get that into the ground right now. Oh. All right, Wesley, you wanna help me, bud? All right, bring the... That's a giant knife. Bring it over here, please.
Really giant.
Sure is.
I have the case.
You got the case. Perfect. I'll take the knife. Thank you, son. We're using a hori-hori. This is a Japanese digging tool. This thing's really cool. All right, you want to help me plant this?
Hori-hori.
It's a hori-hori, that's right.
Why is it a hori-hori?
That's just what it's called.
It's a hori-hori, Mom.
Very cool.
Hori-hori. Why is it a hori-hori?
Well, it's actually Japanese for dig, dig. Isn't that funny? All right, so we just dig the hole. We're gonna put...
What's that? What's that?
This is the worm castings. We'll put that down
I
first.
got worm castings.
Yeah, here, put some in. All right, we're doing the garden lime with calcium.
What's that?
This is calcium. You want to put some in there?
them?
Here, grab a little handful. Put them in. Good.
What is this?
That's worm casting. We got the Epsom salt we're using.
Epsom salt we're using?
Yeah.
Can I have some?
Yeah, here, you can grab them right here. Throw some in there. Perfect.
Can I see what Epsom salt
Yeah,
is?
check it out. Yeah. All right, here we go. Let's get in the ground. Now you want to plant tomatoes nice and deep because tomato plant will actually root all along its stem. You see all these little hairs? These will actually become roots. So if you plant the soil all the way up to here, then all of this will actually become part of the root mass. So you want to plant them deep. Sorry, bud. All right, let's get this in the ground.
This is a diet.
All right, how's that look, Wesley?
I think it's more Epsom salt.
A little bit more Epsom salt. All right. Ooh, that's a lot. Okay, good. Excellent. All right, let's get the next one. All right, the next one that we're planting is a white tomaso. It's a white tomato. We're gonna put it right here. All right.
Put Epsom
You can put some Epsom salt? All right, we're gonna dig it up.
There's a lot of it.
A lot of it? Okay, that's fine. So this stuff is nice and loose. Doesn't need, you can easily just dig it by hand. I just like using this tool because it's pretty badass. All right, we got the Epsom salt in there. Thank you, Wesley.
Yeah.
Got a little grass piece grown in. All right.
With the Epsom salt.
Yep, you got the Epsom salt. You want to grab some of the,
This
here, grab some of the worm castings. You want to put some of the worm castings in there?
is
Yeah, I think that's enough for the Epsom salt. That's good, bud. Thanks. All right, you want to grab some worm castings? Doing the garden lime.
One chunk of it, then that's all of it.
Just one chunk? All right, put the one chunk in there. Wesley's putting in the worm castings. Have those.
And what is this?
Get a nice deep hole
What
here.
is this?
That's the lime. We already got that in there, bud. You want to help me plant this? All right, we're gonna pop this out. See what it looks like. Yeah, look at those nice white roots. See, bud? That's what the roots look like. Isn't that cool? Wesley's excited to eat some tomatoes.
Step on this?
You can step on it if you want.
I was beginning to want to step on something.
All right, we're gonna plant it kind of close to our stake here so we can kind of tie it up as it's growing. Thanks, bud. There we go. All right, let's do the other ones. Looks like a squirrel or something was helping us plant our tomatoes. This is like a deep hole. I don't know where that came from. Looks like some little animal. All right, well, thanks for the help, squirrel. We're gonna put a tomato plant in there. All right, next one that's going in is Aunt Ruby's German Green. This is a green tomato. Now it's different than the fried green tomatoes. When you do fried green tomatoes, you're actually taking an unripe green tomato. This actually ripens green. So we're planting a lot of different colored tomatoes this year. It's gonna be really cool. Look at that, nice healthy root system. These guys probably could have been planted in the ground a week ago, but the weather is just finally good enough for it. But look at that nice healthy plant.
How much Epsom salt I have?
You got a good amount of Epsom salt, bud. All right, you want to bring it over here? Yeah, that hole is actually convenient. A little squirrel. All right, you want to put that in my hand? I'll throw it over there. All right. Got some Epsom salt.
And then more Epsom salt.
All right, a little bit more Epsom salt. Got the garden lime with calcium.
Can I get a little more garden lime?
A little more lime, yeah. And then we'll do the. Here, I'll throw it over there. It's a little far of a reach. You can do it. You got it. Just throw it. There you go. Nice job. Good job, bud. Thank you for your help. I think it's always good to encourage kids to garden as well. It's a very rewarding activity.
Can I put a little bit more Epsom salt?
I think that's okay. You might end up with a lot of Epsom salt on your plants, but it's worth it.
Can I put a little more lime in there?
Yeah, you can put a little more.
Where?
You can fill it just right over here.
With this lime?
Yep. All right, here we go. You're off to over there. Yep. There you go. Perfect. All right, thank you.
Epsom salt?
Yeah, we'll do the Epsom salt in just a minute. Okay, next one we're doing is Dr. Wykes or Dr. Witchy. It's a big yellow tomato. So we got reds, yellows, stripes, whites, greens, a lot of cool tomato colors.
Can I,
Look at that. Beautiful plant.
can I put this in
Of course, bud.
now?
Yeah, let me just dig the hole first.
It's a little far.
A little far here. I think you can reach this one. There you go.
I don't know if that's
There you go. Perfect. Awesome. Thank you. Are you going to get some of the garden lime? There you go. Here you go. Here's the lime, bud.
oh, this is the lime.
Yep, this is the worm castings. And the garden lime. Throw it in there.
Coffee.
You got it. Boom. Excellent. Nice job, bud. Alright, let's get that in the ground.
I think a little more Epsom.
Okay.
I'm gonna put more Epsom on that.
Alright, bud. All right. Okay, one more handful of Epsom salt.
No, I think I can stand on my knee.
All right, I think you got it. Thanks, bud. All right, so now that everything's in the ground, I'm going to show you the different varieties that we're growing with the seed packet so you can see what they look like. And then I guess that's it for today. You want to tell them thanks for watching?
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one, guys.